Gentlemen, you all ready? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Directors of Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District. We'll start this evening with a pledge to the flag. Director Barnes, if you'll lead us, please. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. This evening's open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14 to be replayed on Sunday, August 30th, 2015 at 2 p.m. and on Monday, August 31st, 2015 at 6 p.m. on Channel 14. It will also be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district's website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. At this time, we'll entertain any conversations that we'd have with the public if we've got any speaker cards, Madam Clerk.
We do have a speaker this evening, Mr. Roger Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell, sorry to see you're not in a blue shirt. Good evening. How are you, sir?
Just fine, Director. My name is Roger Mitchell, lifelong member of this fine district. I stand for two reasons this evening. On a personal note, Chief Wells, thank you so much for the phone calls that came to our family. It's well appreciated. On a more positive note, we're having our annual fundraiser dinner for the restoration of Rio Linda's second fire truck. I think Melissa will be handing you a flyer. It'll be October the 3rd, first Saturday in October, 6 o'clock dinner, a complete ham dinner, all you can eat. We're going to have 4 speakers that evening, and I'm allowed to tell you this evening they're world-class speakers, and I'm allowed to tell you who 3 of them are, not 4. 3 of them, the first one will be one of your newest employees, Mr. Scott Andrews. He's in, for the sake of my lack of knowledge of knowing what his official title is, I would ask the chief.
He's the new communications supervisor.
He's been a lifelong friend of mine and his family for well over 50 years. And since he's a high-tech guy, he's the person that's putting all the plans together for what will go into that engine room as a museum. It's literally going to be a jewel box. So we thank him for being one of our speakers. 2 of the other speakers are going to be from the Horseless Carriage Club of America, and one will talk about the restoration of the fire truck, and the other one's going to talk about just one piece of the truck, the radiator, and how much money it cost and what went through to get that radiator in that form. And I would tell you the 4th speaker will, it certainly appears it'll be a member of this district, but I'm not at liberty tonight to tell you who that person will be. So we'd love to see all of you there to hear these speakers.
Well, maybe if you tell us, we'll come.
Beg pardon? I'll make you a deal.
Okay?
Okay? You're going to come?
Sure, if you tell me who it is.
If I tell you who it is.
Because it may have a big impact on whether we come or not.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you this much.
He's in the
That
room?
one of those 2 people that will be there, they're in this room.
Okay.
Will that get you to come, Director?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Directors. Any questions?
Gentlemen? Okay,
Thank you
Roger.
very much.
Thank you very much.
And Chief
Appreciate it.
Wells, again, thank you very much for those phone calls.
You're very welcome.
Okay, Director Roger.
Yes?
Will
Yes,
Director
Director.
Scheidegger be there?
Beg pardon?
Will Director Scheidegger be there?
You know, if there's any way we could twist his arm or tell him someone will pay for his dinner or something, maybe that would get him there. I'm not sure, but he's certainly welcome, as all of you are. And if begging and storytelling helps, we're willing to do all those things.
Then I will certainly pay for his dinner.
Thank you, Director. Any other questions,
Thank you,
Directors?
Roger.
Thank you, Directors.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I'll entertain a motion for consent.
I do have a question on the consent, Mr.
Okay, we have a question on consent.
Chief, I just got a question. Going through the consent items, we've got a request to purchase 5 Tahoe SUVs for $208,000 and change. Questions come up, why are we buying a big V8 Tahoe instead of when the 6-cylinder Explorers might be more efficient or some other vehicle out there? What have we done to make sure that this is the right purchase for us?
Yeah, and actually, I appreciate the question, and I know Chief Daniels Basically, it's interesting, the dialogue that goes into purchasing these vehicles, and I know Chief Daniels has some more technical information, but one of the things, and Bill will go into it, is the reason why we have these and what we use them for, and they actually have tow packages in them so that they can pull heavier trailers and boats and that type of thing as they go through their life history with the district. So Chief Daniels, if you want to elaborate on a couple of those things.
Sure. Good evening, Board of Directors, Chief Wells, Deputy Chief Bill Daniels. So why do we purchase the Chevy Tahoes for our command vehicles versus the Ford Explorer? Well, we conducted a study approximately 2 years ago, 2013, on what command vehicle type we want to have for the organization. We chose the Chevy Tahoe for quite a few reasons. To begin with, the Chevy Tahoe has a greater capacity to handle various terrain within our jurisdiction. Not all of the areas we go down a highway like the CHP's Explorer, right? They tend to sit a little lower, so they tend to not be so good for off-road, going up around the river, out in our SRA, out in Rancho Murrieta, for example. We also need a vehicle, and we chose the Tahoe because it provides ample storage. The Tahoes have a lot more carrying capacity for our personnel. And as an example, the Explorer is about 80 cubic feet. The Tahoe sits right at about 116 cubic feet. So you actually get more carrying capacity. So we happen to be transporting people quite a bit from scenes, you know, at least not quite a bit, but capable of carrying equipment, heavier loads, because of the command module that may go in the back, depending on what vehicle is going to be outfitted for and used at that particular time. We also, as I mentioned, the command module, but we also assess the Tahoe. They actually handle better than the Explorers. We found that they're safer, and because we're in the urban-suburban environment, we feel it's safer because of a bigger vehicle versus a smaller vehicle, depending on going through the intersections, because of the visibility of some of these don't have light bars on them, if that makes sense. So there's an impact issue and accident issue with the vehicles. We also have a need to tow, as Chief Wells mentioned. So the Explorers actually utilize a four-wheel drive capability full-time, whereas the Tahoe, we can actually turn it on and off. That's a little bit more efficient, and it reduces wear and tear. They also have the Tahoes have the capability to turn on. It's a module. It's a separate gear module for towing, and so that's also an additional feature. And you have to think about how we use our command vehicles. Our command vehicles may start out at a certain level, maybe it's assistant chief or a battalion chief, but it will end up being transitioned throughout the organization. As a matter of fact, our vehicles, we try to get our sedans or our command vehicles, if you will, but all of our staff vehicles, 125,000 miles when we try to get rid of them or transition them out of the organization, or 10 years. And so at about 60,000 miles, we'll change that assignment. And so by changing assignments, we want to make sure they're consistent so we can move them around the organization. So we have Tahoes already, so we don't want to go over and purchase Explorers or different styles of vehicles because of the compatibility of moving them through the organization. It also helps out on maintenance. So if you think about a mechanic, we have all our mechanics down there, so we try to bring in a Tahoe so they get specialized, they understand how the maintenance, the procedures work, the parts that we get stocked. So even though the Tahoes happen to be $7,000 more than the Explorer, they're totally different vehicles. One's lighter, more medium-sized, one's larger, higher profile, meets capability of the organization, and it can be utilized in a variety of functions in the organization, so we get full use out of it. So we pay more up front, but we save a lot of money in the back end by having consistency.
Thank you so much, Chief.
All right.
Appreciate all that detail, and I'll make that motion then on the consent.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a first and a second on the consent items. Any other questions relative to these consent items? There's several of them this evening. Any questions? Hearing none and seeing none, please call the roll, Madam Clerk.
Dr. Rosali? Clark? Scheidegger?
Aye.
Wood?
Aye.
Barnes?
Aye.
And Gould.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to presentation items. This evening, we're receiving a financial report through June 30, 2015 from our CFO, Ms. Thomas.
Good evening, Directors, Chief Wells. I'll be presenting tonight the financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2015. This is a report that's actually normally presented to the Finance Committee on a bi-monthly basis. Because we're unable to hold a Finance Committee meeting this evening, we thought it was important to present this to the full board.
And Ms. Thomas, if I might hold you there, just so the public knows.
I'm very sorry.
We could hold a finance meeting, except that we lost the chair 2 weeks ago, and both members of that committee were not going to be in attendance, and so we really wouldn't be able to have a quorum to be able to hold that meeting. Isn't that correct, Madam Clerk?
One member was going to be present, however, we would have needed the alternate
Alternates to be
quorum.
there. So we just felt it was best that we hear this report that is normally in finance come to the full board. So thank you. Continue, sorry.
Correct. So I did want to mention that the presentation that I will be giving is supplemental to the report that is in your packet. And also I wanted to mention that while this is a report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2015, these are preliminary unaudited results for 2015. They are subject to change. The primary reason that they will change is that there will be revenue and expenditure items that we become aware of after the close of the fiscal year, but that are related to activity prior to June 30th that will adjust the results. Additionally, there are some other reclassifications and adjustments that will be made through the audit process. So we will be coming back after the completion of the audit with the final audited numbers for fiscal year 2015. We hope to do that sometime by January of 2016. Okay, so before I get into the numbers on this chart, I just did want to explain a few things. You'll notice in the top right-hand corner, for those of you who aren't familiar with these presentations, there's a page reference there that references the page number in your packet that has the detailed information in the financial report. So the first chart that I'm going to talk about covers total revenues, and we're showing that information for three different lines here. So there's the actual result for fiscal year 2015, which is the red line, the actual result for the prior year, fiscal year 2014, which is the green line, and then the budgeted number for 2015, which is the blue line. You can see that we ended up with actual total revenues of approximately $183.7 million. And you'll see by comparing the red line to the green line that there was an increase there between 2014 and 2015. The largest contributor to that increase, or the gap between those two lines, is the Intergovernmental Transfer Program, those IGT revenues. So we're reflecting IGT revenues of about $17 million in fiscal year 2015 that we didn't have in 2014. It's important to note that of that $17 million, really only about $6.6 million is net revenue because there was a $10.4 million transfer that had to be made in order to receive that $17 million back. But that entire $17 million is reflected here, and that's the biggest reason for the difference between the 2 years. Additionally, we did have an increase in tax revenues. That's obviously our largest revenue source. So tax revenues for fiscal 2015 were about $119 million, and that was about a 6% increase over fiscal 2014. And we ended up receiving about 99.8, very close to 100% of our budget for that revenue source in 2015. Overall, for revenues, when you compare actual to budget, you can see that budgeted number there of about $185.2 million. Overall, we received approximately 99% of our budgeted revenues. This next chart just shows one of our specific revenue categories, which is medic cost recovery. And these are strictly the ambulance billings, so we're not including those IGT revenues or the GEMT revenues that we receive in these numbers. So one interesting thing to note on this chart is we were looking at these reports throughout the year on the bi-monthly basis. You can see that for a significant part of the year, that red actual line was really trending below the blue budgeted line. It was looking as if we were going to come in significantly under budget in this line item, but we really ended up finishing pretty strong and coming in very close to budget. So we had total revenues of $31.9 million compared to a budget of about $32.2 million. I did want to point out here that when we talk about revenues, because these are preliminary numbers, we're including revenues on a cash basis only. So this is what we actually collected from the period July 1, 2014 through June 30, 2015. So one of the adjustments that will be made for the final numbers is we're going to look at the revenue accruals. So we are right now collecting revenue that's really related to activity that occurred prior to June 30th. But we're including in this $31.9 million revenue that was collected in July through September of the beginning of the fiscal year that was really related to the prior fiscal year and has already been accrued into fiscal year 14. So what we'll need to do is determine how much total revenue we collect July through September of 2015 that was really related to activity prior to July 1 of 2015, compare that to the July through September early in the year, and whatever the difference is will either be added or subtracted to that number. So this is a really good example of one of those numbers that will change when we have the final results.
Ms. Thomas, can I ask a question about this trending line? It looks to me like the first quarter of the calendar year, you see a dip in that revenue, and it stays for almost that quarter. And I'm wondering if that's a cycle of insurance billing, or there's something that we can tag and say, or is it just, we're post holidays and our collections dip by 1 or 2%? Do we have any idea of why that happened? If we looked year over year and seen that maybe potentially this is a quarter where we will see a trending line below what we expect?
I think as we were moving through the year, we were certainly seeing lower cost recovery. So our sort of our revenue per transport was down, and we were really attributing that to a higher percentage of the calls being covered by Medi-Cal, where we have a lower reimbursement rate. I think we maybe have seen that even out a little bit, is what we're thinking. We're still so that our revenues we're projecting on a going forward basis will be pretty flat. We're not going to continue to see that deterioration, but from a seasonal standpoint, I'm not sure that we've pinpointed any particular explanation for that. So transitioning on to talk about expenses, this chart shows salaries and benefits expenses, which obviously represent our largest category of expenses. You can see that our actual results were expenditures of $142.4 million for the fiscal year, and that compared to a budget of $146.2 million. So we spent roughly 97% of our budget on for salaries and benefits, and there was roughly $3.8 million that was budgeted but not spent. The largest factors contributing to that were a relatively conservative budget for overtime, where we budgeted more than we ended up needing to spend based on the experience that we had for leaves and deployments and other things. And then also there was $1.2 million that was budgeted as the final part of the FLSA settlement payment, which was a bit of a timing issue. I actually discussed this at the last Finance Committee meeting when I reported out on the results through the end of April, where we had identified that $1.2 million was budgeted because it needed to be paid out in fiscal year 15, but really that expense had been accrued into fiscal year 14, so it wasn't ever going to show up as a fiscal year 15 expenditure. So that $1.2 million is part of the reason why the budget was underspent as well. This next chart here shows total expenditures, so including salaries and benefits, as well as services and supplies and capital outlay. And you can see, looking at the lines on the graph here, that we had actual total expenditures in fiscal year 15 of roughly $176.4 million. And comparing the red line to the green line, you can see that there was an increase over fiscal year 14. The largest factor, again, contributing to that increase is that IGT. So remember when I talked about revenues, I said there was a $10.4 million transfer that offset that. So you're seeing that $10.4 million reflected in that red line. And that's contributing to the biggest increase over the green line. And then comparing the red line, which is actual expenditures of 176.4, to the budget of 185.2 million, roughly 95% of our total expenditure budget was actually spent. So part of the difference is the 3.8 million in labor that I talked about on the previous slide. And in addition to that, there was about 5 million that was budgeted for services and supplies and capital items that was not spent in fiscal 15. Of that amount, roughly 1.3 million were items that weren't spent in fiscal 15, but will be spent in fiscal 16. So items that we just didn't complete in fiscal 2015. A helicopter upgrade. There's some ambulance purchases and ambulance remounts. So that contributed, as well as other factors, including negotiating better prices for things. Schedules being delayed due to staffing shortages or vendor delays, and other things. I did want to mention that one of the things that we are doing this year, which is kind of new for us, is a kind of a more extensive review process throughout the year. We're on a monthly basis. We're going to be evaluating budgeted to actual results on a quarterly basis, really revising our estimates for the year of what the spending will be. And what that's going to allow us to do is sort of identify those variances as soon as possible so that we have the opportunity to make better decisions during the year about how to use those resources. So this table really just summarizes the information that was presented on the previous charts. So you can see for revenues, looking at that first row there, all but roughly 1.6 million of the budgeted revenue was received. So we ended up receiving, as I said, about 99% of the budget. For expenditures, all but there was approximately 8.8 million of expenditures not budgeted but not spent, translating into 95.2% of the budget expended. And when you compare our revenues to expenditures and subtract the expenditures from the revenues, we ended with a surplus of about $7.3 million, which represented about 3.9% of our budget.
Jeez.
So this chart and then the table below it present our general fund reserves. And looking at the table, you can see, hopefully you can see, it's relatively small type, I'm noticing, but that we started with a reserve of approximately $13.9 million at the beginning of the year. And then looking at the bottom number there, we ended with a reserve of approximately $21.2 million. The difference between those two being the $7.3 million surplus that was generated during the year. When you compare those reserve numbers to our net budgeted expenditures, which are essentially budgeted expenditures net of some one-time items, we get our reserve ratio, which we started the year at 8.2% and finished the year at 12.5%. This next chart here shows our total cash balance. So I did want to point out there's a big difference here between cash and then what we were showing on the previous slide for reserves. The total number here of roughly $50 million that we ended the year with in cash includes cash in all of our funds, both restricted and unrestricted. So for example, about $22 million of that $50 million is cash that's set aside for the payment of our pension obligation bonds. So it's not general operating fund reserve, it's cash that's restricted for that purpose. And then I wanted to note, you probably noticed that this red line, we're sort of reversing the trend from previous years here. We have that uptick at the end of fiscal 2015 that you really didn't see in either of the prior 2 years, and that's because that's when we received those IGT payments back in. So you see that cash being reflected there in the last month of the year. And then finally, I wanted to end with showing you where we are with our CERB fund. And CERB stands for California Employers Retiree Benefit Trust. It's essentially our OPEB or Retiree Health Trust Fund. And you can see that as of June 30, 2015, we had almost $14 million in that fund, which is made up of contributions to date of a little over $13 million, including about $5.9 million in fiscal 2015, as well as earnings that we've received to date of about $776,000.
So let's just leave that slide up there for a second, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Since I can't imagine that there's many public agencies that have this going on, that now I just want them to get a little jealous, right? Because this is a huge thing if you're looking 15 or 20 years down the road. Some of the employees that may still be around. This is a very difficult policy to put in place and then to stay with it. But as you can see, $750,000 just in earnings, which will only continue to grow as we put more in that pot. So this is one of those things that I think everyone needs to applaud themselves in this room for really, I think, taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, and really making this a focus so that we could continue to provide that benefit to the men and women who work so hard. So I just like sitting and looking at that for a while, so if you don't mind, maybe you can take some questions why this one stays up.
I would be happy to.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Director.
the important add to your point, Mr. Chairman, is that if you have the inverse, if you're not contributing, the inverse in terms of the disparity is going to grow. In other words, you're not going to have earnings and it's going to get worse. I had one other question on this, since we're waiting to enjoy and relish
Right.
this moment.
There you go.
Basking in it, I guess. Was there a target that we were shooting for at this point? In terms of, I see where we are, the 13,178. Is that on target? Is that where we expect it to be? Do we know? Is there a target?
I believe it is on target with where we expect it to be when we started implementing the full funding of the ARC. I was actually just reviewing some information that was put together, I think a couple of years ago, at least at this point, in terms of what we thought the earnings were going to be, and we were very close. That $775,000 amount was very close to a number that was in there. So I think we are on target. We're certainly we're paying the full ARC, budgeting to pay the full ARC. So from that standpoint, we are on target.
Yeah, and Director, just to add to that, I think the on target of this, based on our actuarials on the ARC, the annual required contribution, when we're meeting that based on our actuarials that are done every 2 years, I believe, I would say that is the definition of being on target, and that is where we're at.
I think it's great. Look at the bend of this curve and look, project it out. It's fantastic.
Other questions for this presentation? Thank you, ma'am.
I did have a couple more.
Oh,
Sorry.
you do?
I thought you were done. Are you done relishing? I mean, can we go on now?
Oh, you want to look at another slide?
Are you leaving us?
This slide concludes my presentation, but I will stay for any questions that you have.
May I ask a couple more questions?
Say it slower.
What is
Go ahead.
this?
Go ahead.
Or Zally Gould? I enjoyed this presentation, and I think the public needs to know how important the business of this organization is. And Made me reminisce about my days on the Finance and Audit Committee. But anyway, thank you for your presentation. A couple of little questions, just for my clarity. On page 23 of the package, not of this, if I can be as confusing. The reserves are at 12.5% as of 7/1/15. Reserves are very important. It's something we've talked about a lot. Where is that in relation to where we expect to be? What, is there a target? Once again, same question. Are we behind? Are we ahead? Are we on target?
Yeah, I believe that the current policy is to work towards a 15%
Right.
reserve. So from that standpoint, we have not yet met that target. However, you know, as you can see, made progress toward that target during the year.
So it isn't broken down. I knew we'd set the 15%. I think that's great. But it wasn't set down year by year to get to the 15%. As long as
I
we're
don't believe
moving
so.
in a positive way towards 15%, that's a positive statement.
Yeah, I think the goal, of course, is to get to the 15, and I know in the board policy, it talks between 15 and 50%. But I would know, or have the public understand as well, that we have closed resources as well.
Yeah.
So we're kind of doing this fine balancing act based on reserve as it, and we're not going to go into the next year's budget yet. That'll be next meeting, but there'll be some consideration as we move forward into how do we balance a reserve and establish the service in the closed areas of the district as well. So it's kind of going to be this balancing act. I think this board has set a very solid, premise standard or whatever you're going to call it, that we need to be able to get through these tough times that we've seen in the last number of years with a strong reserve balance. And that is the goal of the administration, to meet that need.
But you can see from where we've come and the advantages of that in terms of our credit worthiness and our
Absolutely.
ability to conduct business. So I think it's a healthy thing.
I think in the last number of years, our credit rating has come up, and
Yeah.
we've done what we've said we were going to do.
Thank you for that. On page 24, I just was, the 47% expended. Let me see.
On capital assets?
Yeah.
The 4,000
Yes.
block.
Why did we only hit 47%, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, and I think the majority of the explanation for that is that we have budgeted to purchase 2 ambulances
Okay.
that were not purchased.
Good answer, thank you. And frankly, I had several other questions that you answered in your presentation, and again, thank you for it. Good job.
Great, thank you.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, okay, we got one. Go ahead.
I'd just like to suggest, first of all, thank you for the presentation. It's very well done and very clear. Some of these things are what I consider to be key indicators, like OPEB and the reserves. It would be useful if we had a list of key indicators that we could check on a regular basis. Whatever the board felt were their key indicators to talk about where we were with reserves, where we were just to demonstrate that. So on an ongoing basis, that could be brought forward or just sent to it. That'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Good idea.
Randy, can I ask a clarifying question then? Are you asking our CFO to put together a list of those key indicators that she would suggest that we receive monthly updates on, or is that, or the budget meeting and finance committee, or finance and audit? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, what I'm thinking here is something along those lines where we mutually agree what key indicators we, the board, would be useful. We can do that collaboratively with the CFO, and then those things could be given to us on a quarterly basis, just or a half a year, however, so that we could see progress like this on a consistent basis.
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, this report is typically presented to the Finance Committee on a bi-monthly basis. So it's certainly, this information is certainly available at least that frequently in that format. But if there's desire for a different format or frequency, I'm open to that as well.
Well, this, I think, is part of the discussion. I, for example, have an interest in overtime funding, about the OPEB funding. Suppose we kick around the idea of what key indicators other board members might want to see, and then without being any more burdensome than we already are, see if we can come up with a way that that could be presented to us, even electronically, on whatever frequency, quarterly, half year, every 15 minutes.
You know, some of the discussion, or just some thoughts for, future discussion, is maybe at the end of the presentation, there could be a summary of one last slide. It's already embedded in the information as it went, but oftentimes it being in a sequence of event and other different items maybe isn't as readily noticeable or as a benchmark. So maybe at the end of the work that's already done, at the conclusion of that, hey, the key indicators are these, and one final slide to show a benchmark
That'd
of,
be great.
highlighting those within the existing materials.
So as we reestablish the Budget and Audit Committee, what we'll do is we'll put that piece in on their agenda, and they can come up with ideas of what should be on that final slide that then can be distributed to the full board
Great.
as they receive the information. Director Wood, you had a comment.
I was just going to suggest that at the end of at the end of the presentation of the Finance Committee, the President of the Finance Committee could make that part of their report to the full board, as opposed to imposing another task on our CFO.
No, that's great.
Does that work?
Yeah, it's a good crossover because we don't necessarily see all of the data presented to the Finance Committee. So I think your question's a good question, and just get a matter of getting it there as easily as possible for staff.
Never actually heard you say that before, Director Scheidegger.
Do you have another red shirt?
I'm sorry. All right.
Did we leave that slide up there long enough?
It was wonderful, and I appreciate my colleagues leaving it up there. Any other comments relative to this presentation? Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that very much. All right, our next presentation item, very exciting one, is Emergency Operations Plan Grant. Thank you very much for announcing that. AC Ellis, Captain Law, and Miss Coffey with Bold Planning are going to make this presentation. Chief, good evening.
Good evening, Board of Directors, Chief Wells, Assistant Chief Patrick Ellis, A-Shift Operations. It's my pleasure to bring to the board and to the agency an updated emergency operations plan. This plan was initiated and a grant was sought and approved by Economic Development Larry Davis and his group in November of 2014. So a team was assembled by the chair of BC, Forrest Rowell, who cannot be with us tonight. He went and got himself married on Sunday, and he's somewhere down in Tahiti drinking a Mai Tai. So congratulations to Chief Rowell. Chief Rowell put together a team that was comprised of himself, Captain Barbie Law, and Captain Jason Vessel, and there were several other members that participated in this project, and it's been ongoing, and they've done a fantastic job. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, I'd like to pay some special acknowledgement to Captain Barbie Law. Barbie, as you know, was instrumental in the implementation and the ongoing success of the EPCR program. When I came in the office in March, I watched what she was doing over in her little area there, and I call her the closer. She came in at about the seventh inning, and she brought this thing to the finish line. I'm really proud of her, and I'm grateful that she was able to put the time in, and she put a lot of time in it with Hannah. Hannah Coffey standing right next to me, and I'd like to just read you a brief introduction and bio. Hannah brings a vast level of experience in emergency planning. She's technical author and analyst of Bold Planning and has 12 years of experience in a wide variety of government, industrial, and environmental sectors. Bold Planning has been designing and implementing continuity plans for over 17 years across the country. Hannah brings a comprehensive vision to the table for all the stakeholders and has structured and authored emergency plans for multiple jurisdictions and tax districts in California, Georgia, Minnesota, New Mexico, and she's also a resident of Tennessee. So she flew out here all this way, and I've met with her a few times. It's been just a pleasure working with her, and she's been instrumental. And we have her on contract for the next 2 years to help this program move forward. In addition to, I'd like to pay special thanks to Steve Kentelme and Roger Ince. Sac County OES. They were partnered in this project and were extremely helpful. And this project lines up with what their expectations are. And given the focus of this project, while we're in an epic drought, there is a projected El Nino, and this plan that's going to be presented to you, it couldn't come at a better time, in my opinion. So with that being said, I'd like to have Captain Law come up. She's going to go through a brief PowerPoint, and then I'm going to have Hannah actually demonstrate the program and how it works. And what's really nice about this is somebody as technically struggled as I am, I could get into this thing and move around the annex as it's an all-risk program. It could be put on any smartphone with the electronic gauge. We have iPads on all the equipment. The fire chief, the president of the board, we have a variety of ways that this can be accessed and used when the big event occurs. So that, Captain Law?
Good evening. Let me take a second here to get our program going.
Captain Law, you may need to bring the mic up a little closer. No, closer.
Is that better?
She's thinking,
She's, yeah, she takes,
Sorry.
she processes a little slower.
Okay, so I'm going to start this evening by giving you a brief overview of what an emergency operations plan actually is. Because it's a little bit different than our standard operational plans. As we are involved in emergency response, we're used to going to unexpected events on a daily basis. But an emergency operation plan is actually a plan that's going to define the scope of preparedness activities that we've engaged in, and it's going to explain the emergency management activities necessary within a given jurisdiction to handle a major disaster. The EOP format actually works well for our conventional daily responses, but that's really not what it's intended for. It's actually geared towards extraordinary events, including natural and man-made disasters. And I'd like to show you just a brief video that highlights the need for an emergency operations plan here in our region.
Buried in mud and starting to dig out, Sacramento area flood victims trying to recover from the recent storms. Sacramento County officials are still assessing the damage tonight. They say nearly 40 homes may have been hit by flooding.
Most of them are in the Auburn Villa Mobile Home Park near Citrus Heights. And that's where KCRA 3's David Bieniek is tonight with the cleanup. And also questions about whether the victims could have been a little better warned. David?
Good afternoon. Among the debris headed for the dumpster, carpets, furniture, and these sandbags here, which were stacked about 1 foot high in front of a doorway, but which would have done little good because where I'm standing, the water was at least waist deep. Now, some residents here in this mobile home park said they would have tried to pull their trailers out before the flood, if only they'd seen it coming. A machine scraped mud, and people tossed water-soaked possessions out into the street at the Auburn Villa Mobile Home Park, where about 24 families were hurt by Sunday's sudden flood.
You know, it's gut-wrenching. It's just, you have a hollow feeling in your stomach. It's awful.
A tributary of Arcade Creek flowed over top of a concrete flood wall that was supposed to protect the park. A pump with a 6-inch outflow pipe couldn't keep up, and soon the water here was 5 feet deep. You think somebody could have gotten hurt?
Oh, definitely. I could have drowned. I stepped out of here and the water caught me.
93-year-old Ruthie Taylor, who had to be carried out yesterday, said she's seen it flood here before several times, but that
This is the worst.
just days earlier, Sacramento County flood officials had insisted creeks and streams would, despite the storms, stay at normal levels.
Well, at this point, it doesn't look like there's going to be any flooding based on the National Weather Service forecast at this time.
How much do you think the streams and creeks will come up between now and the end of the weekend?
It's really going to be normal levels.
The county told us last week they didn't expect any flooding.
Well, this is prone to flooding.
Some residents plan to move as soon as they can. Others say they have nowhere to go. Ruthie Taylor and her grandson say they're happy just where they are.
Just the act of God. That's what happens, and it's just part of life.
Lake County flood officials told me that prediction about no flooding last week always came with a disclaimer about the possibility of a sudden downburst. They say that's exactly what happened. About an inch of rain, they said, fell just upstream from here. less than an hour, and that's what caused the sudden rise in the creek. Live in Citrus Heights, David Beatty, KCRA 3 News.
Okay, so I brought this video in because I felt it was very timely with the projected weather issues this year coming up with the El Nino event. And it actually occurred in our own region within our own jurisdiction. And there is potential for something like this to happen again. And although this was, in comparison to the area that we normally cover, small in scope of the size of the area that was impacted, we do have a lot of potentials in our area for larger problems. And what this short video really shows is some of the areas that were not perhaps addressed adequately with an emergency operations plan. And an emergency operations plan should include preparedness activities, recovery, response, and mitigation efforts. And in this particular incident, the mitigation actions were perhaps not as much or as good as they could have been. Although there was sandbagging done, it was not high enough to actually address a worst case scenario. There were not flexible projection models for predicting the scope of the problem. There was not an adequate plan for addressing people with access and functional needs, like the elderly woman who had to be carried out by her neighbors. The preparedness activities were perhaps not as robust. Not sure if supplies were delivered for those sandbag needs or not. But there didn't seem to be, as from the residents said, adequate instructions and warning for them to get out of the area so they didn't have to be rescued. Response, we saw that timely evacuation didn't necessarily occur without neighbors helping each other to get out. Gas lines were not shut off prior to the event to prevent hazmat issues. And then recovery, you have a need for debris removal, and that's always going to be the case in any major disaster. So going forward, the purpose of this project and our EOP update was to basically assign responsibility to organizations within our region and specific individuals for carrying out specific actions that are going to exceed our routine activities that we already engage in. It's also intended to establish some clear lines of authority and organizational relationships and show how all of our activities are going to be coordinated in this region with all of our partners. And it's going to describe how people and property are going to be, protected during an emergency. The current objectives of this project were to identify personnel, equipment, facilities, supplies, and other resources available within our area and through automatic and mutual aid agreements with partners in the region, and to reconcile what the requirements are going to be and what we're going to require from other jurisdictions in order to adequately handle a large-scale emergency. A little bit of history, Chief Ellis already touched on some of this. The last time the district engaged in a full-scale emergency operations plan process was in 2003. Since then, we all know we're with the 10-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, and as a result of that disaster, FEMA and DHS it came up with some updated guidelines for emergency planning, and in 2011, they shifted requirements to maintaining a 3-year planning cycle and updates for emergency operations plan. Given this, the district realized that our current plan was outdated, especially in regard to current threats and hazards in our region. And without actionable information, Metro Fire's ability to provide effective response could be impeded. Because of this, the district actively sought out funding. We all know that we were in some lean budget years, and thanks to Larry Davis, we were able to receive a grant award through California Department of Water Resources and their flood emergency response project to update the EOP, and the district subsequently entered into a subaward agreement with Sacramento County to specifically revise the flood annex of our EOP. Was the major focus, but we've actually taken the opportunity to do a complete revision of the entire plan. That subaward agreement was for a total amount of $50,000, and the scope of work was to review the existing flood plan that we have, to produce and update the produce an update following the Department of Water Resources EOP guidelines, and to deliver Metro Fire's finalized plan to Sacramento County OES and the Sacramento Utilities Department for inclusion in the area's comprehensive flood management plan. Project management, as Chief Ellis mentioned, we hired Bold Planning, and Bold has been working with us as a continuity consultant to guide our process and to assure that we achieve compliance with not only the grant specifications but FEMA guidelines, as well as hosting the plan for us and maintaining an integrated database for the EOP moving forward into the future. We have submitted the draft plan revision at this point to Sacramento County OES, which was the next step in the process. Once the county approves what we've submitted, it'll go to Sacramento Utilities Department. Some successes, we've had some successes and also identified some opportunities for growth as a part of this process. Successes are that our EOP is now actually in compliance with state and FEMA guidances for emergency planning. We've worked on establishing new relationships in the community for people with access and functional needs, and that's with both with and without disabilities. I'm excited moving forward. I've reached out to the California Office of Emergency Services, Vance Taylor, who is the chief of the Access and Functional Needs Office, and he's set me up with some contacts for the community that's hard of hearing, and I'm excited and happy to announce that I think we're going to be able to move forward and work with them to put on a sidewalk CPR event that actually would include some interpretation for people that are hard of hearing, so that's exciting. And then we can branch from there, working in the community to really meet the needs of everyone. We've also, with this project, come up with actually a collated all of our legacy records into one easily accessible database with tiered multi-user encrypted access. A large part of this project was really doing the research and finding all of the old agreements and MOUs and all of the supporting documents and getting them into one location where we don't have to go into several offices and file boxes and offices somewhere else. So that's a plus. Opportunities for growth as we move forward. We strongly feel that we need to develop a schedule and staff assignments to maintain that compliance with the 3-year planning cycle going forward. I don't want to see this sit on a shelf. It's a living document that we need to keep up with. Also with that, it is a living document, and the focus of the project at this point was updating our flood and dam levee failure response and the water treatment and system failure portion of the plan. But there still is extensive work required in the other annexes to assure that we have operational readiness for all hazard types. We do need to continue working on our relationships to adopt a whole community approach to emergency planning. We need to engage senior staff in the planning process to facilitate ownership of the plan in its entirety. Refresher training for command staff on the county's Web EOC program. We've done initial training, but since then we've had retirements and a lot of promotions and newer battalion chiefs and people coming up that didn't necessarily have that initial training. So refresher training would be a good idea at this point before El Nino hits, so that we can participate with the county as a partner and actually access Web EOC. And then as far as the emergency management planning portion goes, just further training for command staff and people coming up so that we really have some depth for succession planning moving forward. When Chief Wells and Chief Holbrook are no longer here, somebody else is going to need to keep this moving forward. So that's my overview of where we are right now, and I'd like to turn it over to Hannah so she can actually present you the tool that we've been working with.
Good evening. Wow, okay. So I tell people that indeed Bold Planning is not in the business necessarily of zombie apocalypse plans, but we're in the business of keeping grandma out of the news plans, as we saw in that video that Barbie gave us. The idea here is that we are not necessarily fear-mongering or building what I call excessive response plans, but we are preparing for things that are very real. To that end, we have been in the business of emergency operations plan database now for over 15 years, and we host a series of these across the country on multiple servers. They meet mil-spec, government spec. California Courts is one of our other clients, as is the court system in Chicago, Oklahoma Tax Assessor's Office, Oklahoma State Department of Health, State of Tennessee, and State of Florida. You can ask them how they feel about us. What this does is it takes the regulatory burden, hopefully, off of you and people like Barbie, Forrest, and Pat, and shifts it to us to some extent. In this database, we host and maintain the most current and most researched versions of emergency operation plan guidance and templates, if you will. And these templates build a backbone and a substructure for you guys to worry about the details. It's much like TurboTax. You are responsible for telling us how many more kids you had this year, how much money you lost in the stock market, but we are responsible for the calculations. At the end of the day, the buck really does stop with me. I think this is one of the pluses of hiring a smaller company. You've got me built into this for any number of years now. It's a good thing that Delta now offers a direct connect. And hopefully that frees up people like Barbie to actually think about their responses and for you guys to build more robust plans. Having done this now for a number of years, I guess I come to it with the hope that when I approach an organization with as much turnover as yours, that we manage to build in some of your institutional knowledge and preserve it in this process by bringing it into the database, making it more visible, and allowing access to incoming employees and firefighters. I think we get a much more robust and long-term view of the planning process and what has worked or not worked in the past. Secondarily, I think that hosting it in a living platform where it is malleable within reason allows you to develop a planning culture, right, and a culture of preparedness that is not necessarily burdensome, but can be engaged. The way the database works, again, think of it as a TurboTax for emergency management. It has a base plan built in. You are really not on the hook for that to the majority of the extent of the work. But then it has a secondary set of annexes, which Pat referenced. And these annexes are built out in such a way that responders can access both the concept of operations, right, the overview and the structural components of it, as well as a series of action lists. Now, if I'm correct, this is going to be broadcast on cable TV? Okay, and as such, I'm not going to go into the details of the annexes pursuant to federal law. So while that means you're going to have to take me at my word that it has amazing and wonderful material in it, I think I would like to entertain questions at this point as to what the process has accomplished so far and what you have ahead of you in terms of work, because I will say you're not all off the hook yet.
Who selects the annexes?
Those are mandated by federal law and by SIMS guidance here in California.
And while there might be 16 of them that are identified by the feds, I'm assuming that our experts in this community can add.
Yes, and you can add, in fact, I have other clients in Minnesota where they have independent municipalities or cities who have joined existing EOPs and have built their own accessory annexes. The program is almost infinitely customizable, and yes, you can add any number of keep grandma out of the news annexes.
Other members of the board? Excellent. I've asked mine. Go ahead, Shiner.
I'd like to thank Chief Ellis, Captain Law, and other staff for bringing this forward. I hope the community appreciates what an important tool this is for our department. I don't think it's a question of if there's going to be another crisis, another disaster. It's a question of when. And I didn't realize that our plan had last been updated in 2003. And that in itself is really noteworthy. But secondly, the fact that there now is a DHS and FEMA requirement that it be updated every 3 years, which, by the way, I think is good. It's good to have an ongoing review mandate. So, once again, another fine thing that Metro is giving to its community in terms of providing protection to it. One other little side point on this, once again, I do this all the time, Mr. Davis, thank you. It's nice to be able to not be taking this out of our pocket. It's certainly a tool we need to have, but it's really nice to be able to get it through grant funds. So, good work, all of you.
So can I ask just an operational question? My assumption is that when there is an event, it sounds to me like multiple parties from around the region have access to this file, click on the file based on what kind of annex it is, and then from that, it looks like what explodes out to them is the pre-planning you all have done, and then they basically just plug in and start working with that tool. So it's kind of a stepwise process that they go through, and everybody's looking at the same document and using the same tool, and you hope that the communication is improved by all using the same template. Is that 36,000 foot kind of understanding of what this is designed?
Yes, indeed it is designed to make everybody sing from the same sheet of music. One of DHS's larger national goals has been to help individual tax districts, municipalities, school districts, counties, and states speak the same language so that there is less breakdown in communication during the actual event. The tool breaks out these actions both by phase, by department. It can build you individual checklists. It just depends on the needs of the response agency or the municipality or jurisdiction. Yes.
And are these templates on these annexes, are they being developed all over the country?
Yes.
So is there a chance that we pick a new type of annex that could occur? All the experts standing next to you on your left and right say, there's an issue that might be happening in this region, and there's not a pre-plan that we've already got. Can they go into a repository somewhere and pick that up and then apply it here, tweak it to meet our region's specific needs, and now instead of 16, you have 17?
Correct. You have almost a limitless kind of reservoir through BOLD planning in which you can access other national examples, templates. We have the ability to go and request from other agencies or cities redacted material and show you what's working there and what hasn't. Built into this is also a backup communication system. One of the things that this does is we host multiple servers across the country that allow you to send messages to each other in the event that your servers go down. That actually took place in our hometown of Nashville, Tennessee. Tennessee's Nashville Metro lost all of their servers during the 2010 flood, and the only one that was still up and running was ours over in Belmead. Oh, really? Yes.
I don't even know where that is, but.
It's a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee,
Oh.
but yes.
That's east of here.
Thank you.
East,
Thank you.
very far east, yes. Yes.
And I'm assuming then part of this process then is we integrate this into our EOP training, and we activate this during simulations. And I'm assuming that our simulation facility, which is state-of-the-art, second to none, top dog, is where we're going to be able to utilize this tool in maybe tabletop exercises as well.
Right.
Would that be a true statement?
Very much so. And in fact, the tool maintains a log of all exercises, planning, and planned maintenance that takes place here. You enter them in the tool, and this helps you in the event of an audit in which you have to prove exercise compliance. I tell people it also helps you make your work visible to your colleagues. One of the things that often happens in this process is that people don't know how much work, say, people like Barbie are actually doing behind the scenes, or how burdened they are during an event if they are both. I live in a rural area. I have a farm about 80 miles from Nashville. And people did not realize until Bedford County built its EOP that our sheriff was also our paramedic and was also our fire captain. This process that documents this and makes it visible really highlights those, what we call interdependencies and weak spots. So it's a great CYA too.
Chief, did you have something you wanted to say?
You know, all I really wanted, nothing I can really add there other than fantastic work, meaningful work. I mean, and this is one of those things that in years past, I mean, there's nothing worse than a plan that's in a book that nobody knows where the book is. And I can tell you over time that technology clearly helps us with this. But the one piece that hopefully hasn't been underserved here is the literally on smartphones, tablets, fire engines, in the front of every BC rig, they can access this. And the succession planning tool, as we look towards our senior leadership transitioning and having this readily identifiable database that can be updated in real time, integrated into our simulation center, trained, rehearsed, et cetera. Great job. Thank you very much, Chief Ellis, for your leadership in this project. Captain Law and others that have worked with Metro Fire, and clearly our consultant has been fantastic. So, and Larry, of course. Some of the gaps in time here, you look at what we've not done in the last number of years based on money, and this is something that we are doing based on grant funding, so thank you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Director Rosali.
I had a question about the collaboration between agencies.
Yes, sir.
And so in this process, I think about flood agencies, school districts, that kind of thing, that we interact with from Metro Fire on a regular basis. How does that come about?
That's actually the million-dollar question.
We actually, since it's been a while since we've engaged in a planning process, we've been actively having to reestablish relationships. Players have changed in the area, and we've been actively attending WebEOC refresher training, FEMA classes to get ourselves updated. The FEMA classes have really been instrumental in establishing some of the new contacts that we now have with people with access and functional needs. So it's really a matter of picking up the phone and introducing yourself to people, and it's been surprising how much people are actually able to help actually at the table with us. During this process, we did have meetings with City of Citrus Heights, City of Rancho Cordova, obviously Sacramento County Office of Emergency Services. We had some training exercises that included area hospitals, training exercises including our regional fire agencies, California Department of Water Resources, PG&E. So we have reached out and spoken to a lot of people, but it is work to maintain those relationships, and I will tell you there's a lot more work that still needs to be done in that area with picking up the phone, so.
So this is all about the El Nino, huh?
Oh, it's coming, and all the other annexes, it's extremely relevant to what we do here.
Yeah.
And like Captain Law indicated, we have reached out to both the cities, and we plan on really taking this to the next level. And it's at a place right now where, as an operations chief, I'm comfortable that if the aha moment comes, we can open this thing up and we can react professionally as Metro Fire.
It's wonderful stuff. Any other questions for this fine team? Director Barnes.
Just want to echo all the comments that's already been said. I know in the public safety world, we talk about if it's predictable, it's preventable. And it's a matter of when, not if this happens. The only question I have as far as these are boilerplated templates, as maybe not boilerplated, but templates as in to help and assist people. How often is this updated? Is it manually, or does it constantly go out and grab information from updated OES maps?
That's an excellent question. So the way we usually divide this, and I will say that you are somewhat of an exception because you are a unique tax district, and as such, we had to have council come in at Bold and give us some guidance. I have done this in the past for school districts and forestry districts in the Southwest, but you were a first case. We update on an ongoing basis, rotating through regions. Once someone like me is assigned to a region here and in New Mexico and Minnesota in the Valley region of Minneapolis-St. Paul, we remain with it And we are obligated to update the database on a pretty much 30 to 45-day cycle. That's the bulk of my work.
Thank you very much.
Good questions. Really
Okay.
good questions.
Other questions regarding this presentation item?
If you guys aren't careful, I'm going to poach her, by the way.
The hell you
Just-
are.
No, she's next up.
We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Great presentation.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to action items. Board Clerk Pania.
Good evening, directors. There's information before you this evening that's going to allow you to make some decisions tonight in the appointment process for the director at Division 1. So with Director Monk's departure on August 13th, there's some information that's been gathered since then. I've had assistance from Director Gould, General Counsel Lavra, and Chief Wells. So this information tonight has been reviewed and put together with their assistance. It's also under the guidelines of the Government Code, Section 1780, and it is in line with past practices of similar situations that when the district has been in this situation, this is similar to what's been done. So the attachments this evening to your staff report are the Board of Directors vacancy timelines, a sample version of the director's notice, and a Division 1 map. So I'd like to go over the vacancy timelines with you. So the first timeline that we need to be mindful of is that within 15 days of the notification, we need to let the elections offices know of the vacancy. So Division 1 falls within both Sacramento and Placer County, so those notices were made last week. Going forward at tonight's meeting, we'll take some action on whether we decide to look within Division 1 or expand and look district-wide for consideration of applicants. And we'll also schedule a special meeting date. That special meeting date is going to be important because going forward, we need to post the vacancy notice. That vacancy notice will need to be open for at least 15 days, and it will need to be posted in 3 or more central district locations. I have set a anticipated deadline for submission based on what I think is going to be the special meeting board date based on some responses from a poll. And that date is going to be October 1st, which is going to allow about a full month for any interested parties to participate in the process. That process is going to be submitting a letter of interest and a resume. And then we're going to conduct a special meeting, and that will be to interview the candidates, appoint, and finally administer the oath. And legally, this needs to be done within 60 days. So October 12th is the 60-day date. So there's a sample version of the vacancy notice that will be posted, and there were 2 highlighted areas, and those highlighted areas are what is going to be acted on this evening. The first is whether or not you want to look within Division 1 or whether or not you'd like to expand it to within the full district. And if you would choose the second option, all interested applicants would be considered. However, applicants from Division 1 would be encouraged to apply. And just a little bit of background, because we're so early in the 4-year term for this division seat, when the next general election takes place in 2016, that seat will be up for election. It will go through a general election just like the other seats, and that director will then serve for the remaining 2 years of the term. So that's just something to be aware of. And then finally this evening, we'll be choosing a special meeting date. And the reason for that is because that date will be posted on the notice. It'll be important for the candidates to keep that evening open so they are here to participate in the interview process, and that's for planning purposes.
So you need 2 items tonight.
2 items
We
this
need a
evening.
motion on whether we're going to do Division One inclusive only or open it up to our district-wide. And then do we all land on Thursday, October 8th as the special session for interviewing potential candidates? So let's have a conversation about the first item. And that's, do we want to run candidates through just Division One or the entire district?
If I could add something, President Gould.
Yeah.
What you're deciding is what the posting will require.
Right.
It doesn't you don't necessarily have to tie yourself down tonight that you're only going to appoint someone from the particular division. It's just how do you want the posting to read in order to draw whatever candidate pool you're going to draw from the posting. The posting can be, is required to be in a conspicuous place, and it can be placed throughout the district. It's not necessary that it be posted only within a certain division.
Sure.
So you don't need to bind yourself tonight to a criteria for appointment. It's only what is going to be set forth in the notice.
Go ahead.
In my relatively youthful tenure on the board, I didn't say age, I said tenure on the board.
See him looking at you. Didn't hear him. He's waiting, he's ready to pounce on you.
There was an issue where we had an individual who was selected to serve on the board and who was then not in the district that they were serving. And I guess, why would we expand at this point, having the option to going beyond the district? Is there criteria that would be utilized to say, this is why we're going outside Division One?
If I could address that issue. One reason to do it is to guard against having no one from that division apply.
Right.
And then you're left with, well, who do we appoint? We've set this criteria this way at the outset as to who we're even going to consider. And now we're in a position where no one's applied, and now you leave the appointment process to the County Board of Supervisors. And if they don't act, then you're back at calling a special election to fill that seat and pay the costs thereof. So it's just a matter of what kind of pool do you want to pull in?
Broader field is what
Yeah, and I would suggest it's preferable, I would say, to appoint someone from the division, since this is not an at-large board. But this is just having to do with the posting and drawing in, and then members can vote as they see fit on that issue. But you don't kind of want to be left high and dry.
Go ahead, Delman.
What was our past practice? I know we appointed someone, we filled a vacancy not too long ago.
I'm not 100% sure on that. Madam Clerk may be able to respond.
That's right, yeah, there you go.
He's in the room, so we just have to be careful
Yeah.
about how we talk about him. But I do remember that when we've appointed in the past, it was our preference, we threw the announcement out that you could apply district-wide, but we made it very clear that our preference as a board would be to appoint a qualified candidate from the division that we were looking at. And I think that's been the past practice for a couple of individuals that we've appointed over the last 16 years. So if my history serves me, I think that's kind of where we've gone. For exactly as Council Lawver has discussed, is we don't want to get into a bind where either the county soups are appointing or we're stuck with a fairly large bill to run a general election. And so we threw a pretty wide net and then narrowed it down and gave preference to the division that we were appointing.
You can also, there's nothing that prevents you from stating in your posting notice that preference will be given to those who
Right.
reside within the district.
In fact, I
order
think that that's kind of
further
where all of us are
emphasize that
headed.
point.
Yeah,
And I would say it's fair to those that are applying, that they be made aware of that in the posting, that if they're coming from another area, division, that they already potentially would be behind the power curve in the sense of, it's our preference to appoint from that area. So any other questions about that particular element? Are we all kind of in that same direction?
Just one question about this is, let's say we broaden it, it is someone from outside the district. In 2016,
No,
not
can't be
district,
outside the
excuse me,
district. Division.
Division, excuse me, I meant division. Out of, in the 2016, when they have to run for the final 2 years, are they able to run if they no longer live in that division?
No, there's different rules for election versus
Okay.
appointment.
I just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that when that happens. It
And
might
that's
be
another good
temporary.
reason why having a preference for people within the division, then they're better suited to have a track record and make it a little bit easier road when the election comes around. But the answer to that question is that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I would like to make a motion that, number one, we do announce that it be announced district-wide with special consideration being given to District 1, or Division 1, excuse me. And two, that the process be held on October 8th. Does that cover?
Okay, I have a first and a second for the said motion. Are there questions or comments relative to this action item? Madam Clerk, that meets your needs, I'm thinking.
Yes, it does.
Okay, any other questions? Gentleman in blue? I think she's calling the roll now, Randy.
In that case, aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Scheidegger.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Gould.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I don't even know what to say. All right, let's move on. Okay, I have no report this evening. We'll move on to Chief Wells.
All right, good evening, directors. Obviously, I just wanted to announce that we'll be taking the final budget to be presented to the full board on September 10th, our next board meeting. Want to thank Chief Bridge, Chief Savage, and Captain Tim Beard and myself. We all went out to Fort Worth, Texas, that we talked about at last meeting, to look at a burn tower. And I can tell you, the consultant that we've used over the last number of years out in our Zinfandel props, Tommy Abercrombie, has built this one in Fort Worth. And it's a spectacular building, a lot of features in it that we liked. We're now out to a subgroup that's going to be working through the truck committee and the engine committees with the training division to generate what is that we want inside of our building. It's not going to be as big. That one was 8 stories. Ours is probably going to be about 4. But a lot of things that you can get in there, a lot of high, literally state of the art. We wanted something that wasn't going to, the second it's built, kind of be, okay, that's great old technology. We wanted something that's going to grow for the next 50 years. So thank you for that. We went out and had a great opportunity to see that in person, and spectacular facility. I met briefly this last week with Supervisor McGlashan about some Park District property that was up in the Rio Linda area. I'd met with Roger Mitchell out there as well, myself and Larry Davis. So we had a meeting out there to discuss some ongoing issues. I'd also like to say that we had a very successful, at least I believe it's successful in the command staff. We had a town hall meeting yesterday out at Station 32, had a room packed full of our on-duty crews as well as division managers and representatives of the different divisions. Very honest discussion for almost 2 hours. All the different division heads had an opportunity to speak, take questions, and that's kind of an ongoing communication issue that we're trying to do. We're doing senior staff type of videos where we do those monthly, and then we have actually weekly or as often as something relative comes up. Nobody wants us to be up there doing doves in the window there, but something timely. And so when we do that, we can give some real information. And then we want to do town hall meetings where we have the discussion. And guys can literally sit and ask, straight up, ask the fire chief, I heard this rumor, and we'll answer them to everybody involved and what the truth is. Because we're not interested in rumors. They're more interesting sometimes, but sometimes the facts are more transparent. So that was good. We appreciated that. Upcoming meetings, I'm on the second Wednesdays of every month on KFBK, 8:10 in the morning. Stay tuned for those. I'm speaking at the Citrus Heights Chamber Luncheon on the 8th of September. The topic will be on what it means to be an all-risk fire department. I think what we do, I think, is interesting to people because they don't recognize the things that are outside of the fire and EMS business that we do. So we speak to that quite often. We'll be having a 2x2 meeting with the city of Rancho Cordova on September 9th. Of course, we have the the remembrance on September 11th. It's a very special day to the fire service and public safety in general, as well as the nation. This year, myself and Chief Taylor, and I'm not sure of anybody else, that we're actually going to help climb the stairs. Maybe we'll be carried up the stairs. But I do know it's a great remembrance. Everybody carries the name of one of the fallen firefighters from FDNY up to the top of the building, a total of 110 stories. So that'll be at 8 a.m. at the Renaissance Tower on K Street on 9/11. Very excited about some new hires, a lot of new blood coming into the agency. We have, effective the 24th of this month, we have Chris Dargan, who is a community risk specialist, and we have on the same day Janae Callison is going to be a fire inspector 1, and those are new positions. Then internally we have Carmen Gandara as administrative specialist assigned to EMS. Courtney Gibbs and Lindsay Hunter are now fire inspector 1s. And we have longtime employee Brad Schumacher being promoted to battalion chief, and that'll be on the 4th of September. And promoting to Captain Eric Haas, which will be exciting on the same day, the 4th of September. We've had a reassignment effective on the 23rd of this month. Captain Vestal has been selected to fill the EMS 24 on the C shift, and that's the 24-hour oversight of the SRPP program. And then, unfortunately, we have Coach Armstrong will be retiring at the end of this year, and I will tell you, those are going to be some very large shoes to fill. So we're going out for recruitment for a health and fitness program manager, and the final filing date for that will be September 3rd at 5 p.m. We have recruitment for an office technician, final filing date of the 4th of September at 5 p.m., and that's both internal and external. Our candidates for our prospective recruit firefighter paramedic positions, internal for the SRPs and the external, that's out right now. And then we have a promotion exam coming up for engineer, and the final filing date for that will be the 2nd of October at 4 p.m. And just a recap on the PIO duties lately. I know last board meeting we talked about, and it was quite a sound bite, pardon the pun, Hot August Bites. It was a pet-friendly event at Rush Park, and that was on the 16th. And great impact out there. Our single role paramedics are doing a great job on this hands-only CPR, and they were out there, had about 100 contacts with Michelle Idem, Captain Idem, and also the community emergency response team, the CERT team, was out. So I'd like to shout out for everybody that was able to participate in that, and we had about 100 people go through the hands-only CPR. So that concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Questions for the chief? Director Clark?
What about the march that we have, or the walk for me during the 9/11 that we have every year?
You know what? I don't have that on here. You're exactly right. There's a 5K and a 10K.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't.
I'm sure we'd all.
Yeah,
like
it's
to-
actually on the Sunday following, on the 13th.
The 13th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. That's an important event as well.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for the chief? Chief Not Taylor?
No.
Good evening, directors, President Gould. Eric Bridge, Assistant Chief Operations on the C Shift, and I can't help but think of the Blue Man Group right now.
You
but,
can't.
It's a good show.
Nice.
Really good show.
And the Blue Man Group's dads.
I swear we didn't even
Their
plan it.
fathers.
I know. I got the call. I got blue. Just a little darker, that's all.
Father of the Blue Man Group.
Well, I just want to deliver the numbers for you tonight. Since last August 13th, our last board meeting, we've had a total of 3,471 total calls, of which 11 were structure fires and 41 vegetation fires. On the EMS side, we've had about 2,600 dispatches, and of which 1,900 of those were transported for about 73%. So we're maintaining that percentage of transports. Our partners AMR have helped out with 31 dispatches and 26 transports as well. Update on our current deployments throughout the state. We have about 25 personnel that are out, and I think we have about 4 of them are actually in limbo. We're currently en route back to from one, our OES Type 3 team is en route back here, but there has been an order number for them, so they may be going back out also. So we're just waiting for our definitive answer on that at the moment. That's all I have unless you have any questions.
Any questions for the chief relative to the ops report? Thank you, chief. All right, General Counsel Lavra, anything to report?
No report.
Okay. Anybody representing the local? Sir, welcome. Good evening. Come on up, introduce yourself to us.
I'm Jim Mandis, Captain Truck 106, also a shift shop steward. I was asked to, just come in this evening and just let you know there's nothing going on with the union. The vice president and the e-board, they are back east in Maryland in a union conference. And other than that, I don't have anything to report to you.
Okay. They're doing a lot, though.
They're keeping busy, yes.
They're not doing anything, I mean, but yeah, good, okay. Thank
If
you
have
very
any
much.
questions, I probably can't answer them, so.
No, it's fine. Thank you for coming tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to committee and delegate reports. I just want to make members of the executive committee aware that if we receive a tremendous number of applications for this that we can't handle in the Thursday night interview, we might have to convene as executive members and with some help, cull some of those applications through and see if we can get down to a manageable number, only because we can't, do 150 interviews in one evening. So that might be something that we have to exercise. I just want to put you on notice that as we move further down the process, in the past that hasn't been the case, but if something happens where we do, we might have to gather and kind of look at those with the first blush. So with that, we'll move on to Com Center JPA. Chief Holbrook.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Chris Holbrook, your representative on the Communications Center JPA. The Communications Center JPA met last Tuesday in these chambers. We were presented with a contract for the new computer-aided dispatch. That contract is a draft contract. No action was taken at that meeting. Since that time, we have submitted that contract to our own legal for review. It is my intent to bring that before this board on the 10th of September as a presentation item so that you have visibility on it as well. Communications Center's next meeting is the 29th of September, at which time we anticipate to vote on that contract. I have nothing further unless you have questions.
Chief, this is for a new CAD?
New CAD, estimated build time is between 18 and 24 months. The district has actually been very aggressive, and Amanda Thomas, our CFO, actually sat on the negotiations committee. They have driven that price down to something extremely reasonable. That the district actually, instead of having to finance long-term, is actually going to pay out of pocket. So credit to Amanda and her folks on that team. So.
Okay, that's good news.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Chief. I don't see Director Kelly, nor his blue shirt. So I'm assuming that there's no one else that can give us an update. It looks like the California Fire and Rescue Training JPA looks like they have a meeting on the 10th or the 24th of September. That's noted in the record. I'm thinking Director Woods on finance. You have anything for us this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next meeting will be on Thursday, September 24th at 5 o'clock in this office.
Okay. And obviously, we're going to have to look at how we can hold hold that meeting. We might have to tap into some of our resources here as alternates, given the fact that we've lost the chair, and that's it. So we might have to look at if we can even find a quorum for that particular meeting. If not, then we'll obviously hear that material at the full board level. So not to stress, but if we can't make that happen on that night, we'll just roll that over into the agenda of the full board. Does that meet with your approval?
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, thank you. Move on to Policy Committee, Director Scheidegger.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The next exciting chapter in the Policy Committee will be held on September 10th. I will not be able to attend that meeting, but the helm will be manned most admirably by Director Barnes.
Director Barnes, is that a true statement?
That is a true statement.
Yeah.
As we sit here today.
Okay. All right, very good. Now, Chief, I have a question for you. Closed session has been an action item or on the agenda, but are we going to exercise
No.
that this evening?
No need to go to closed session. this
Okay,
evening.
thank you very much. We'll now move on to board member questions and comments, and I'd ask you fine people to keep them short because these fine people are tired. Director Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The only thing I have tonight is an announcement as far as a former Sac State alumni and of their football program. Their first home game, September 5th, against Eastern Oregon at 6:05. They are honoring all civil service employees as you show up and show your departmental ID from public safety and all the public safety agencies that it is a free admission into the game. They want to honor us inside the game, make announcements, thanking everybody for the services around the region and around the state that everything is done. So just wanted that public.
Are you going to let that young man in that really put Sac State on the map here a couple of days ago?
Absolutely. He would probably be the dignitary for the day.
Yeah, I hope so.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty awesome. All right, Director Arzali.
No comments for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Director Clark?
Yes. I'd like to thank Amanda Thomas for an excellent report. Thank you for helping us understand the little machinations of the budget. Also, Ms. Coffey mentioned that, the EOP program was kind of like, some people mentioned it might be fear-mongering. Well, that's not fear-mongering. I think this is one of the great things about this district is that we are proactive, we look forward, and those are the types of things that make us one of the top organizations in this country. And I really appreciate us having this, that proactiveness going on. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Clark. Director Wood?
If you'll indulge me, Mr. Chair, I had, last Friday morning, I had dropped my boys off at school and took my toddler, my 3-year-old, out to breakfast up in Folsom. I was wearing a Metro Fire t-shirt and I was sitting there with her eating our breakfast. And I was approached by a man who's probably in his 40s. He looked down at me, Metro Fire, they take care of you guys, don't they? And what I should have said, I didn't. What I did was I looked up at him and I said, yeah, they work damn hard every day for that too. People who approach me, or I hear comments like that are uninformed or based on misinformation, I always get a little defensive. Not really proud of my response, but it is what it is. But one of the reasons that I can get defensive and get proud about our organization is one of the many things that we do is provide substantive information to the public. And for those who want to educate themselves, it's all there. And we had perfect examples of that tonight from Amanda's presentation, Captain Law, Chief Ellis, and Ms. Coffey. So thank you guys for all the time you put into it. And we can't say enough all the work that Larry does. I don't think the public understands or appreciates that. But was it 8-9% of our budget comes from grants? 7-9%, something like that.
It's a large number.
It is a significant number, and it's a significant amount of things that we get to do for our citizens because of the work that Larry does. And we definitely need to get him cloned before he goes away. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Director Scheidegger.
Mr. President, I had occasion to sit in on that town hall meeting yesterday, and it's just another example of why Metro is outstanding. Kudos to the chief and the command staff for their fine work, standing up there not only in front of a large crowd that was there, but on television. And it wasn't greased. I mean, the questions came in, they were honest and forthright, and they were answered, or a promised response coming. It was a great dialogue, and it makes me proud to be a small part of this organization and see how we operate and how we treat our people. Good job, Chief. Good job to all of you who participated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Scheidegger. Appreciate those comments. This evening, we saw many good examples of the fine work that the men and women do of this organization. And that's what we expect, and every evening, that's what turns out. I want to thank all of you for that effort. I'd also like to thank the representative from the local for being here this evening and taking that time and telling us some of the activities that are going on with that group, fundamental to our operations as well. But with that, this evening we'll close, and thank you very much for being here. This meeting's adjourned. Guys, try not to dress again. The same. I mean,
White next week?